So there's an interesting idea here. Exposure in a camera, if it's overexposed, it's all blown out, it's all white, you can't see anything. If it's underexposed too much, it's all black, you can't see anything. So that black and white, that's the binary of the two ends of the spectrum of the third dimension: depth, height, width, sound, light, color. So if someone gets too exposed, it can be very vulnerable. In every art form, these moments where someone comes along and they've explored this new aspect of the medium that the other people in that medium didn't even know could be explored. You know, texture is its own component of painting. Shape is its own component of painting. But then you have depth and point of view, and then you have the materials used to paint. You know, Da Vinci to Picasso to Dali to Monet to Basquiat. And look at that departure of the dimensions that were being explored and traveled. So then you have Kanye, who's stumbling on what for me feels like identity itself, but it's in the guise of hip hop. It's in the format of hip hop, but he's not doing hip hop. It's like if a filmmaker like Terrence Malick, he makes these poems. I call them visual poems. But yeah, they're films. You watch a Terrence Malick film, like the one with Brad Pitt, Tree of Life, or the one with, was it Ryan Gosling? There's so many. I love Terrence Malick. A Hidden Life, I've not seen that. Song to Song, that one's really good. But yeah, so, you know, you talk to people like him or Tarkovsky, best Andrei Tarkovsky films. Yeah, like watch Stalker, watch Mirror, watch The Sacrifice, watch Solaris. These are like borderline not movies. They're uncomfortable, you know, amalgamations of light and sound and people moving on a screen, and there's story, but it's not a film in the way that like Superbad or Star Wars is a story in the media of film. So you have someone like Andrei Tarkovsky or Terrence Malick, and they're studying something. They're bringing something else to the medium. And so when I see what Kanye is doing, it reminds me of Andy Kaufman. Under the same framework of what we're talking about here with Kanye and breaking the fourth wall and augmenting the medium of self-expression itself, some parallels between Kanye and Kaufman, who is playing with that fourth wall, that sense of, is this a character or is this real? Joaquin Phoenix did in a film called I'm Still Here, drawing on concepts of, is this an entertainer or is this a disruptor? Or maybe it's both. It can be a version of an entertainer and an artist, but it's also a disruptor and a kind of anarchist to the medium itself. But we're talking about the medium of pop culture. We're talking about the medium of people watching an entertainer who's a celebrity, give them art, but now that entertainer celebrity is commenting on the art as a character. Like Guy Debord said, I'm theorizing what happens if an artist becomes aware of the spectacle, so much so to the point where he starts making art in the spectacle as the spectacle about the spectacle. Yeah, for now, Ye is touching on some things that are taboo, and I think he's playing with the fabric of taboo itself. I don't know the guy personally, but the way that he's fondling the texture of Hitler and the swastika, he's trolling. He's doing this troll, but on a topic that, like, you're not allowed to troll about that. You're not allowed to do that. And he's like that young kid with Asperger's that's like now home alone. The parents leave and they're like, hey, just don't open that red bucket in the closet, okay? See you later. He's gonna open it. He's gonna investigate it. He's that guy. He's that kid in society. It's gotta be said. The hurt and harm triggered by Ye's anti-Semitic remarks, swastika imagery, and statements around Hitler are real and deserve to be acknowledged without deflection. And at that same time, we have to ask, what kind of artist chooses to use history's most radioactive symbol as a medium? Is this simply hate speech? Or is it an act of some kind of artistic performance terrorism or symbolic warfare? One that aims to destabilize and unearth something buried in all of us, in our collective unconsciousness. Perhaps it's both. I don't know. I'm attempting to hold space for both of these pains, both of these perspectives that have caused possibly archetypical, disturbing, prophetic, and necessary revelations. Recent tracks like Heil Hitler, Cousins, Virgil Let Me Down, they represent not merely provocations, but a logical conclusion to the aquarium imperative towards total exposure. They're not songs in the conventional sense, but enactments of taboo violation, deliberate transgressions that force a confrontation with cultural boundaries. There's a video I saw online where people are watching the Heil Hitler video and they're like, the jaw drop and they can't believe it. And then they feel like, what does this mean in culture? They're doing the reaction video formula thing, Heil Hitler. And like all of us are like, whoa. As we listen, we have to admit the beat is hard and the hook is really catchy, but we can't condone it. You can feel this tone in everybody that's watching it. I saw Russell Brand, I saw Joe Rogan and Tom Segura. We don't want to defend Ye, but something about what he's doing, it feels deliberate, but also accidental. It feels like strategy, but he also feels innocent somehow. But he's a grown man, so he can't be that innocent. He even said it in Hitler. He's like, I got so much anger in me, I don't know how to take it out. He's going through something. Because he's going through something, we're all now talking about him. And I think he's going against cancel culture. I think he's going against the whole music industry. And he's having this metaphysical tantrum. And it's all happening, in the internet in real time. So I don't know if Ye's celebrating Hitler in the way that maybe he was a month or two ago, which does feel childish. And to add the caveat, now he's doing something different. He's weaponizing the symbol of the most off-limits, taboo thing of all time, the swastika. And I don't think we can commodify it. Whether there's still such a thing as going too far in the digital world where outrage is oxygen and algorithms amplify rage faster than love, if the machine wants controversy, then he's gonna be the guy to feed it the final boss of controversy. And it's called Hitler and it's called the swastika. But does canceling him give it more energy than if we just let it be there? Even if you admire the genius, does it justify the pain? The hooks are catchy, the beats are slapping, and the production is amazing. The horror of it is, it's a banger, but it's built on the most famous trauma of human history. So it's the symbol of evil, and it's delivered in this chart-ready hit single package. But what happens to the line between ritual and reality? There's a lot of ways to push the boundaries. This didn't have to be the way. Yeah, but it's not about have to. It's just where he's at, I guess. But maybe that's the point. Maybe Ye knew that this would cause chaos. Maybe he knew that the world would incite and divide and repel, and maybe like a prophet hacking the system from the inside, he's proving something really terrifying to all of us, that attention is the new God, and even hell can be an ad campaign. And it's not a defense, it's just like, I'm just watching. And in that diagnosis, we're kind of all implicated. Joe Rogan had a very neutralizing, as he always does, perspective. He was talking to Tom Segura, and they were talking about Heil Hitler, and not to defend it or cancel it. Tom was a little more against it. Joe was a little more neutral. Joe was like, it's really catchy, and that's the problem. He hasn't lost a step in the production.
Have you seen fucking Kanye's new song?
Bro.
What?
Here's the thing.
What? First of all, kind of catchy.
Well, that's the problem with it. That's the problem. It's like the guy from production, like he's never lost a step. He can make a beat. He can he's so talented.
He's a genius.
He's a talented producer, man.
Sonically, he's still transcendent. That's what makes it so disorienting. You want to hate it, but you're just nodding your head. He's not just trolling. He's wielding sonic hypnosis and lyrical taboo and cultural landmines like paintbrushes. So what are we supposed to do? What is he doing? What are we doing listening to it? You're gonna have to educate people that think it's okay, and that's real. Ye's not making this track without purpose. He's injecting psychic TNT into the discourse to see who runs, who burns, who watches. And then in that clip, Joe Rogan hits on something really important. He says, I don't think racism is good. Anti-Semitism is not good. Anything really is not good. But there's a benefit to letting people say whatever the fuck you want, even if it sucks. That's the paradox. You can't ban your way into healing. Censorship, I think, is just gonna breed curiosity. Silence is gonna feed that martyr complex. The more you try to shut Ye down, the more you validate his claim that certain voices, especially black men, that are speaking unfiltered are punished for naming powerful interests, which to Ye's point, the Jewish people are this strange off-limit topic. And I'm not condoning it again. Even me saying that is like the same recognition of that fourth wall spectacle thing. It's me saying like, hey, I'm not trying to get canceled. I'm just trying to talk about this and look at it. So please don't cancel me. You know, but to Ye's point, he's saying, I'm pointing at this, fuck you, try to cancel me. Record labels, banks, you know, he's pulling shots at the Jewish community. And he kind of makes us all be like, wait a minute, how much does the Jewish community have control over? I'm not saying he's going to do it or it's okay, but I'm looking at how Ye is looking. And there's something to his point. I'm not saying I even know what it is, but that question is, how does this end and where does it go? That's that shamanic mystical axis. Because when you push this far into the void, you either alchemize or you're going to blow something up. Is he going to die? He said something about people killing him. You know, his bank account's getting froze. His kids are getting taken away. Dude's obviously going through a lot. Meanwhile, you have someone like Ben Shapiro who offered his response, labeling Ye as mentally ill, anti-Semitic, and unworthy of serious engagement, bracketing the artist's work within a diagnosis and a condemnation. His perspective is cold and clinical and pretty polarizing, understandably so. As he's Jewish, he says, this man is sick, this man is dangerous, this man is not worthy of philosophical inquiry. I can understand that from his perspective. When Shapiro says this is just about transgressiveness, as if it's going to dismiss it completely, I don't think he's wrong. It's transgressive. But I think he does miss the entire spiritual register of what transgression actually does. He says some rules exist for a reason, and yes, absolutely, some do. But some were made to be broken, some were made to conceal or repress energies that were once sacred before they became taboo. Not simply violating for attention, I don't think, maybe, but invoking archetypes that make everyone squirm, including people like Ben Shapiro, who represent a kind of orthodox intellectual control over the acceptable limits of meaning. Where Shapiro sees collapse into insanity, I see like a rupture in a fabric, in a membrane, and it's a rupture that says more about us than about Ye. Because instead of asking why someone with that much creativity and capacity, that much genius would dive into such a deeply offensive topic, we throw labels like, oh, it's trash, or you know, he's a puppet. But that erases the real question. Why now? Why this symbol? What is he doing? Why this timing? Ben Shapiro reduces a lot of what I see him comment on to a pretty binary thing, like hate or not hate. But the framework is a little too flat for what Ye is doing. Ye isn't preaching Nazism all the way. He's invoking the most radioactive symbol in modernity and seeing who still believes in the power of the symbol to be hurt. He's not being subtle. He is being the bully. And yes, it's dangerous, provoking, and it hurts people. But Ye isn't hiding. He's deadpan, fearless, honest, staring at the meta camera in the soul. That's more than I can say for most culture makers. One thing that I think Shapiro can't see, and perhaps refuses to, is that Ye is operating in the psychic terrain philosophy, myth, and even the Torah once walked. The terrain of purification through confrontation. Yet, Ye isn't trying to win polite society. He's trying to burn it down and see what grows beneath the rubble. Heil Hitler deploys the most charged symbol in Western culture, not as a political statement, but as a semiotic grenade, as a etymological grenade, detonating the carefully maintained boundaries between the acceptable and the unacceptable. The track functions not as an endorsement of Nazism, but some kind of troll of all time, exploring what happens when nothing remains sacred, when all the symbols on the table become untethered from historical meaning and circulate as pure provocation. How far does free speech go? Just look at this as an architectural impossibility. He's one of the most famous people alive. He's one of the most famous rappers ever. He's one of the most famous black men alive or ever. And then the most triggering, trauma-laden word in the black African lineage community is the N-word, which then Ye says, all my N-words are Nazis, Heil Hitler, which there probably is a term for what that is, but I don't know, paradox or something, but it can't happen. Most famous black man on the planet can't be a Nazi. That's not what Nazis are. And then black people can't be Nazis, so his N-words can't be Nazis. But then he's reorienting our perception, tying it in a bow, and then says, Heil Hitler, Nazis, and him. And it's like your brain just goes like, whoa. Then you have a completely different eyebrow-raising, jaw-dropping moment of totally different taboo on cousins. Transgressing straight male sexual taboo, not for shock value only, but as an experiment in radical honesty beyond social convention. That's one of the things with him. Yes, it has undeniable shock value, but if indeed it is true, which some of us take at face value that it is, then whoa, wow, an alpha male, a black, hip-hop rapper, straight man, confessed same-sex, oral sex, adolescent incest? What? In the same breath as playing the concept of Hitler in like Play-Doh, Lego, Darth Vader, lightsaber, zeitgeist word soup? How many paradigms just got altered forever in modern American celebrity pop culture antics just from those two songs? Or rather, did any? Does any of it even matter? Does any of this change anything? Are we so deep into the spectacle that we have to go to this degree of off-limit topics to rise a reaction out of people? Or is he just being the most honest and happens to be on the leading edge yet again? I don't think the confession of incestuous activity normalizes that behavior, but I can relate. I remember being a young preteen, barely getting acquainted with sexual pressure between my legs and curious near other young boys who might also be terrified and curious about their sexuality, terrified of being called gay, genuinely curious and not completely able to discern the difference between male and female magnetism. All this stuff is off limits at that point. So was a producer rapping. So was a black hip hop leading man wearing a pink polo and being nerdy. That's what I'm staring at. I'm staring at the litany of contradictions and paradoxes that are all off limits, that are far from simple to observe and distill. So you have this supposedly Hitler-loving fascist rapper guy getting some of us to ask what happens when the darkest impulses of the unconsciousness are brought into the daylight. This shadow work as public performance, Carl Jung's concept of integrating the repressed aspects of the psyche as cultural performance ritual. It seems like that's what's happening. And then if that's not enough, and we're just looking at these recent songs and leaks and going through the streams, then this other song, Virgil Let Me Down, transforms his personal grief into this mythological statement. He tweeted, "Fuck Virgil" recently. And most of us were like, bro, what are you doing, bro? What are you thinking? WTF, bro. How could that be? How could he do that? But I was thinking, what did they say to each other that day when they hugged on that rainbow runway on the LV show? What happened between them? And in Ye's eyes, what don't the rest of us know? Maybe he's playing the victim card again, maybe not, maybe it's both. Maybe the betrayal by your friend and your prodigy becoming symbolic of a larger pattern of betrayal within institutions and relationships and communities. Maybe it's just specifically Virgil getting the LV job and he really wanted that, and then he had the mental breakdown, and Pablo and Harley Pasternak guy. Maybe this is all that Aquarian blueprint also toppling an old blueprint. All these recent songs, they don't operate within the logic of the entertainment industry or hip hop, but in some older tradition of the shamanic path, states of consciousness that are temporarily dissolving social boundaries to access deeper truths. The audience's horror and fascination and dismissal become part of the ritual, part of the moment, completing the circuitry between the performer and the witness in the ceremony of that collective shadow transmutation and confrontation. The spectacle is getting alchemized. So what appears as Kanye's self-destruction might better be understood as a self-deconstruction, the deliberate dismantling of the constructed celebrity ego identity self to reveal the raw human being, kid, maybe autistic underneath it all. In an age dominated by curated authenticity and managed vulnerability, this represents the most radical act imaginable. The mega celebrity who refuses the script and controlled revelation and instead plunges into unmediated exposure and almost guaranteed cancellation. Mirror of the age, from Messiah complex to mirror consciousness. Ye is not here to save you. He's not here to be your role model. He's here to shatter the illusion of role models. What we're witnessing is not a carefully curated spectacle, but the uncontrolled emergence of a post-control archetype, a post-spectacle archetype maybe. In a Rosicrucian Kabbalistic tradition, the age of light is synonymous with the age of exposure, the age of truth, the age of honesty. That which has been hidden now must be seen, exposed. Ye's very public combustion in the shadow work of the collective reveals what it looks like when an icon refuses to be owned, silenced, or coded into predictability. He's not just burning bridges, he's burning scripts and books, and in doing so, he reflects a question back at all of us. What structures still control us? What parts of us are still under contract to be liked, followed, and approved? Ye, he's not offering many answers. He's offering a lot of things: inspiration and contemplation and observation and friction, a lot of friction. Friction that forces clarity, friction that demands you either look away or you wake up and look at who you are in this world. I think it's an opportunity to realize that we all need to stop looking for saviors outside of ourselves. God in all shapes and forms is within us. It's a chance to see how we've all been disoriented by the cult of personality and celebrity worship. It's a potential reminder to stop fearing disapproval, stop waiting for the world to validate your expression. In the Aquarian age, authenticity isn't spiritual fluff, it's survival, it's required. I believe he also gives all of us the opportunity to reflect on how we're holding up against our own standards for being compassionate human beings. I don't think any of us could have imagined we were about to see a super famous black man wielding a swastika and screaming "Heil Hitler" anytime soon in hip hop, let alone on Earth. If you saw that coming, you are a gosh darn prophet. But other than that clickbait complexity, that I think it's an opportunity to reflect on why we would not do those things. Yeah, maybe you can sample something and flip it and question free speech, but also amplified compassion and empathy for those who are more activated and triggered by this than me. I'm curious, but someone's traumatized, let me listen. Sometimes instigation into being the change that you wish to see comes from seeing what you do not wish to be. So maybe burn the script. Use the mirror, see the mirror, live the truth, be what you can, be the best that we can be. The algorithmic crucifixion, the sacrifice in the digital Colosseum. René Girard's theory of the scapegoat mechanism provides a powerful framework for understanding Kanye's position in contemporary culture. For Girard, human societies manage internal violence through sacrifice rituals that channel collective aggression towards a designated victim. The scapegoat must be simultaneously part of the community so that it can represent it, and also marked as different to justify the violence directed against them. It's like an emotional, spiritual, mental, social punching bag. Kanye embodies this paradox perfectly. He's the black artist in a white prominent land, the Chicago outsider in a New York, Los Angeles elite circle world of music. He's the self-proclaimed genius in a culture that is suspicious of intellectual ambition. He's bipolar disorder and autistic Rain Man qualities further marks him as other, while his wealth and fame make him a potent symbol of American aspirations. He is thus the ideal scapegoat, similar enough to represent our collective shadow, different enough to safely contain it. And he self-identifies as the GOAT also. Every tweet, every interview, and public outburst become an act of digital pressure release, a ritualized violence where collective anxieties about race, mental health, sex, masculinity, and celebrity are projected onto a single figure, and not without his obvious participation. I think of Russell Crowe's character in The Gladiator. Are you not entertained?
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
The public crucifixion unfolds not on Golgotha with Yeshua, but on Twitter timelines and Instagram stories. Each platform is stationed of a cross that never reaches resurrection. The supreme irony, as Girard would recognize, is that our condemnation feeds the spectacle more powerfully than Kanye's own performance. Our collective clicking, commenting, and consuming completes the sacrificial circuit. We're not just passively observing, but we're activating and we're drinking from whatever that liquid is. We're participants in the ritual, the digital mob that both creates and destroys the gods that we chose. The more we decry his behavior, the more we amplify it. The more we analyze his breakdowns, the more we ensure their continuation. This dynamic reveals a profound cultural ambivalence. We simultaneously demand celebrity sacrifice, the public downfall that confirms our suspicion that the elevated must fall, express shock when the sacrifice becomes too real, too raw, too reminiscent of actual suffering rather than scripted drama. We want our crucifixions to be entertaining, but not disturbing, revealing, but not revolutionary. From Christ to clown, the collapse of sacred meaning. Jean Baudrillard's concepts of simulation and hyperreality help us understand Ye's use of provocative imagery and his relationship to symbolism. For Baudrillard, postmodern culture is characterized by the proliferation, abundant use of signs that no longer refer to any underlying reality. They've become simulations that precede the thing and determine our experience rather than representing it actually. It's like the signpost as you enter Las Vegas from the south by the Mandalay Bay Hotel. It's become a selfie destination more than the actual road and experiences it points. Kanye's deployment of loaded symbols, the swastika, the MAGA hat, the Jesus imagery, the burning house during Donda, exemplifies his condition. They're not symbols in the traditional sense, where the sign points to a deeper meaning. They are simulacra, an empty stand-in signpost that provoke reaction without accurate, deeper reference. The swastika appears not as a coherent statement about fascism, but as a guaranteed generator of outrage. The MAGA hat functions not as a consistent political position by its wearer, but as a disruptive gesture. The Christian imagery signals not theological commitment, but an aesthetic appropriation and self-appointed messianic similarity. This is not to dismiss Kanye's use of these images as merely provocative, although they are. Rather, it suggests something more profound about our cultural condition and recognition of these symbols. His desperate reaching for power symbols, or just genius utilization of them, even as he detaches them from their historical context, reveals a hunger for meaning in a symbolic order that has collapsed. Like a patient with aphasia, grasping for words that no longer connect to the concepts. Kanye's symbolic expressions reflect a culture where signs circulate without depth, where outrage substitute for engagement. What appears as Kanye's incoherence is thus better understood as an accurate reflection of cultural incoherence, a society that has lost its capacity for shared symbolic meaning, painting a desperate hunger for the same thing. His use of this religious imagery, in particular from Jesus to Jesus is King and now Heil Hitler, reflects not simply personal spiritual searching, but America's unresolved relationship with its religious heritage, its simultaneous yearning and rejection of transcendent depth. This is not, as some critics suggest, merely performance art. It's some type of metaphysical warfare in the absence of a shared reality. Kanye's fighting not simply for attention, but for the possibility of meaning itself. In a cultural landscape where symbols have been flattened into content, all sacred gestures converted into engagement metrics. His failures and successes are not separate from this struggle, but inextricably connected and woven into it. America's Mirror, why we watch Kanye break down. The public fascination with Kanye's spiral reveals as much about our collective psyche as it does about the man himself. We require his breakdown. We watch it, we stare at it. It confirms our suspicions about fame, it validates our cynicisms about success, and most importantly, externalizes our own internal fragmentation. In his public disintegration, we see a performance of the very psychological splitting that characterizes contemporary American life. Kanye becomes a ritualized outlet for America's unprocessed traumas, racial wounds that never healed, spiritual longings never acknowledged, masculine ideals increasingly questioned but not replaced. His contradictions, the black man embracing the white woman and the white supremacist symbols, the materialist preaching gospel, the individualist seeking community, that's America. Those are all American contradictions externalized and amplified as a figure. It sounds like Carl Jung exactly. Concepts of the shadow projection and the unconscious mechanism by which we locate our disowned qualities in others, particularly public figures. That's the scapegoat. What makes Kanye such a powerful vessel for projection is precisely his willingness to embody these contradictions for all of us, being the Gemini that he is, to exist in that liminal in-between space where America's shadow is most potent. He doesn't simply reflect specific aspects of American pathology, but the meta condition of internal division itself, our split, our schism within ourselves that happens in culture. The digital crucifixion serves as a psychological function beyond mere entertainment. It allows us to witness the breakdown without experiencing it, to contemplate madness while maintaining the illusion of being safe on our couch in our own rationality, to engage with spiritual questions without actually committing to the spiritual practice necessary to give us the answers. We're not watching him, we're watching us watching him. We're watching the myth of the unified self disintegrate from a safe distance, or so we believe. Conclusion, after the spectacle. If Kanye's trajectory represents the logical culmination of the society of the spectacle, the point where the mediation becomes so total that it consumes its own medium, then this story also suggests the necessity of what might come after. The spectacle, in Debord's analysis, is not merely a cultural condition, but a historical phase, one that, like all phases, contains the seed of its own transcendence. What might a post-spectacle culture look like? Not a naive return to pre-media authenticity. There's no going back, but perhaps a new integration where the power of symbols is neither denied as a cynical postmodernism or lit as a fundamentalism. It would require artists who neither reject the mechanisms of celebrity nor are consumed by them, who can use the platforms of mass culture while maintaining the integrity of their vision. It would demand, also, a different kind of audience, one capable of witnessing without devouring, of critical engagement without projecting, of allowing public figures to be neither gods nor villains, but complex, real humans navigating unprecedented, not gods or villains, but complex humans navigating the unprecedented pressures of real life. It would require us to develop what media theorist Douglas Rushkoff calls the program or be programmed. Consciousness, awareness of how media shapes perception, and the capacity to participate in that shaping rather than being passively shaped by it. Kanye may be too deep in the spectacle to lead this transition. The shaman does not always survive the journey to the underworld, but his story illuminates its necessity. His story can still help us, even if it's not able to fully save him. His use of Christian imagery, however, complicated by ego and commerce, points to the persistent human need for transcendent meaning. His mental health struggles, however publicly mismanaged, highlight insufficient framework we have for understanding psychological difference. His racial provocations, however harmful, expose the unhealed wounds in American racial imagination. As we witness his ongoing digital passion play, we might ask ourselves, do we seek redemption or merely the show? Do we hunger for integration of our fractured selves, our divided nation, our compartmentalized spirituality? Or are we satisfied with the spectacle of disintegration? Can we imagine cultural figures who neither abdicate prophetic authority nor claim messianic status? Artists who create from wounds without being defined by them? The question is not whether Kanye can be saved from the spectacle, but whether the spectacle itself, the vast apparatus of images that mediate our relationship to ourselves and each other and the modern world through the internet, can be transformed into something that serves human flourishing rather than consuming it. His story becomes not simply a cautionary tale, but a challenge to reimagine the relationship between art, artist, audience, and the sacred in the digital age. In the ancient world, the sacrifice was not the end, but the beginning. The ritual that cleared space for new growth, new meaning, new connection. Perhaps in the digital crucifixion of our cultural icons, we can discern not only the pathologies of contemporary life, but also the persistent human hunger for something beyond the spectacle, something authentic, real, connection, meaningful symbols, real experience, and the possibility of transformation that does not require destruction. At the end of the day, Ye serves all of us by being a mirror of what not to do. A superhero we all get to observe and critique from the comforts of our unobserved life, like watching Will Smith in Hancock. The perfectly imperfect superhero we all get to discuss and claim how we would have done it differently or better. A mirror and a reflection of what happens to the one man with all that power that maybe shouldn't have had it. Maybe it was his destiny, and maybe it got too much for him to handle. Maybe he was the one among us that could pull the sword from the stone, who was able to take his fantasy over the edge in a way that none of us had the necessary disposition, skill set, belief, or madness to do. And by doing so, we all get to learn about the potential dangers of squeezing too hard on the idea that there's no chance we could be wrong with our opinions, our impulses, our personal self-satiating ideas of what the world could or should be like. Maybe there are institutions that need to be examined and investigated as to whether they're truly relevant in their current standing. and structural rigidity. But maybe we can all get a little more compassionate, soft, and human in our investigation of those systems out in the world and inside of ourselves. Perhaps what makes Ye's journey so compelling isn't just the spectacle of his rise and fall, but the uncomfortable truth that in his most unhinged moments, he's expressing something many of us feel but dare not articulate. It's a suspicion that the world we've inherited is built on shaky foundations, and it's time to remodel. His methods may be loud or destructive, his expression sometimes harmful, but beneath the chaos lies the question worth asking. What if the madness isn't just in the man, but in all of us and the systems that we've normalized? As we watch this public unraveling, we might consider the true compassion required, not just in condemning harmful expression, but understanding the environment and society that helped breed it, and the necessary human ache for authenticity that drives it. We might find not just a better way to understand Ye, but a gentler way to hold our own contradictions. I'm Rocco Nugent. This is my channel. Thanks for tuning in. Please let me know your thoughts in the comment section. Hit that subscribe button. As corny as that is to say, it means something, and I do have YouTube dreams. So yeah, this is a really complex topic, and I did my best to put it into these words. So, yeah, I'm a human being. If you've watched up to this point, thank you very much. I'm not a robot. If you're a real human being, think about what you say when you type them into the comments. I took a lot of time to make this video. And if you're watching it and it brought you some light, it brought you some curious thoughts, or you don't like it at all, please let me know.